Hey, hello and welcome to our first airing of Army Up and Table Talk. The purpose of these talks are to have conversations about Army spouse employment, challenges, employment and career resources. You name it, because we're going to talk about it. We also have, before I introduce our wonderful guest, we also have Angie.
Hey.
Angie's our program coordinator for AMU, and I am the outreach coordinator, and we're so excited to be here. So we have a special guest who will share her employment and career experiences. We're so excited to have our Army Up honorary advisor, Maria McConville. I've known Maria for several years, and she's always been an advocate for spouse employment and resiliency. And today's topic is about Maria's employment and career experiences as an Army spouse. So welcome, Maria.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, of course. So what is your professional academic background?
Well, I came from Rocky River, Ohio, a place where there was not a lot of military. So I don't have a military background at all, but I went to school in Ohio, graduated from college, but I needed to do an internship. So I graduated with a degree in nutrition and dietetics, but to become a registered dietitian, I needed to do an internship. And I was fortunate that my father paid for me as well as my 5 siblings to go to college. But then after that, I was on my own and didn't want to have to take out loans to do an internship. So I looked for one that didn't have that, where I didn't have to pay for fees and classes and things. And I found it with the Army. I didn't know the first thing about the Army, but I decided to apply for it. I got accepted after being interviewed by a recruiter, got accepted into the Army's internship program at Brooke Army Medical Center. So I went from Cleveland, Ohio, down to Fort Sam Houston and San Antonio for a year, did my internship, then got stationed out at Fort Ord in Monterey, California, after passing the exam to be a registered dietitian, and became the chief of clinical dietetics, where I was for 2 years, and met my husband there. And at the end of my 2-year kind of obligation, I decided to get out of the Army and married my husband. And we moved from Monterey, California to LA, not Los Angeles, but Lower Alabama. And that was my first identity crisis. So here I was, an officer in the Army and chief of clinical dietetics. And then I moved down to Alabama and obviously couldn't get a job. And so that was my first challenge back a million years ago. But over the course of my journey as a military spouse, and Jimmy and I have been married coming up on 34 years. That journey has been frustrating. It's been wonderful in so many ways. I say that I've been unemployed, underemployed, misemployed, and gainfully employed over those 33 years. And it has really taught me a lot. It's taught me to be independent. It has taught me to that when I said, oh, I'll just wait and, focus on my career when my husband gets out of the Army. Well, here we are 40 years later. He's been in the Army 40 years. I can't wait anymore. So back in 2007, at the age of 45, I decided to go back to school for a master's degree. And I went to the school, state school where we were stationed at the time. And I said, look, I've got about 22 months before we PCS again to do this degree. Can you help me? And the academic advisor sat down with me and we figured out the curriculum and how I could get all my requirements in. Jimmy went on a 15-month deployment, and I had 1 in college and 2 in high school, and buckled down and sequestered myself in the library most days. And I'm really proud to say that 2 weeks before Jimmy came back from his deployment, I walked across that stage and got my diploma for my master's degree. And then I started my own consulting business a couple of years later. And that really came more from the frustration of changing jobs so many times, because over the 33 years that we've been married, we've moved 22 times. And so I remember when I started my master's degree, Jimmy said, well, why do you think you need a master's degree? You've never been turned down for a job. And I said, because I've never applied for a job, anything other than an entry-level position, because every time we move, I have to start over again. So after changing jobs 12 or 13 times, I said, I'm just going to start my own consulting business. So currently I have an LLC. And I have been a registered dietitian for 35 years. I'm also a certified personal fitness trainer, because I think that nutrition and fitness go hand in hand. And currently working as a senior nutrition health educator for CHAMP, which is the Consortium for Health and Military Performance, in association with the Uniformed Services University. And I am fortunate enough to work remotely from home, as I've done for the last 10 years. And really, really love working with this group of people, focusing on total force fitness for all of our branches of the service.
Awesome.
You're on mute.
See, technical difficulties. That is a pretty impressive background. You know, you being a vet yourself. So thank you so much for your service and, you know, everything that you have, you know, done for our spouses. But one of the main questions I'd ask is, you know, when you were going through those times of not having, you know, gainful employment, like, how did that make you feel?
Oh, it was super humbling and frustrating. I mean, I think in the beginning, years and years ago, before we had the internet, it was the good old days where you looked in the newspaper and the classifieds in the newspaper to see if you could find a job. And of course, then I felt like I just took whatever was available. It certainly didn't necessarily match my experience or my wants or desires. But I always knew it was temporary. So I might have taken a job that really didn't exactly thrill me, but I thought, oh, well, I'll only be here 2 years and then I'll be leaving. So that was challenging. And then fast forward to when we started applying for all of our jobs over the internet. And, you know, you apply, you spend hours and hours doing your resume and your cover letters, and then you would apply for these jobs, and they would go out in cyberspace somewhere, and you would never get any type of response. You had no idea whether a job really existed, whether anybody was even looking at your resume. And so that I found doubly frustrating and humbling, because you would apply for jobs that you knew you were qualified for, but then you just didn't hear anything in response. So I think that's kind of why I started my own consulting business, because the process was so frustrating and humbling. And I didn't really know where to turn. I didn't know about resources that were available for spouses. I don't even know if during that journey there were resources available for spouses. And it made me feel insignificant, maybe devalued, frustrated for sure. And really just I felt like nothing was in my control until I really started my own consulting business. And I felt like I at least had control over being able to take the work that I wanted to take and then turn down work that I didn't want to take.
And so now this is not one of the questions I gave you, but why should employers hire military spouses?
Well, that's a really great question. I mean, just like in the civilian population, it is, you know, the trend now is for women and spouses to be in the workplace. And one of the things that I try to help employers understand is that even though we have moved a lot of times and we maybe even have gaps in our resume, it doesn't mean that we haven't been accumulating knowledge and skills. Because when you look at the lifestyle of the military, I don't know about with all of you, but when we move, my husband Jimmy gets very focused on moving and starting that next job. And it leaves the spouse to deal with all of the other logistics of the move, right? Cleaning out the house, organizing everything, getting the kids packed up and ready to go, get them settled into their new schools and their new activities, and finding out where all the things are that the rest of the family needs. And so I think what spouses bring to the table is we are extremely adaptable, flexible, resilient, resourceful, and outgoing. I mean, we make friends, we accept new people into our community. We know how to interact with other people. We know what it feels like to be the new person and the outsider. I mean, I think that we're hardworking and honest people. I mean, we couldn't be in a military environment if we weren't punctual, right? So there's just so many things that our military spouses bring to the table. And I'm sure that there's comparisons to the civilian world, but I would urge employers to really take a look at the unique skills that we as military spouses have acquired, even when we weren't getting paid for a job.
Well, Maria, thank you so much for your time. We know you have a lot going on, especially now that the world is opening up post-COVID, and we know you're going to be here, there, and everywhere. So thank you so much for taking this time and sharing this information.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you both.